Not much going on here. Hey, you, dance over there. Just in your underwear. This is the kind of thing temps should do to liven things up. At the New Year's party, John, the son of President Smith, was getting handsy with a female employee who clearly looked uncomfortable. Seeing her distress, I tried to divert his attention by talking to him, but he got irritated and barked that order at me for interrupting him. Other drunk employees started chanting for me to dance, making it impossible to refuse. Reluctantly, I took off my shirt and pants, leaving me in just my underwear, and started to dance. With a whatever happens, happens attitude, I decided to go all out with a silly dance, but a few days later, I got fired. Desperate, I decided to apply for a job at a major rival company. To my surprise, the young and beautiful president at the interview shook my hand and said, "Finally, you're here. I've been looking for you." What? David, want to grab lunch? Oh, sure. Invited by my colleague, Mike, we headed to a nearby diner. Since it was lunchtime, the place was quite crowded. We managed to get a table as soon as one opened up. We ordered set meals and chatted while waiting. At the next table, two women who looked like office workers were excitedly talking about their favorite pop group. What's so great about those lip-syncing dancers? I don't get it at all. Mike muttered, looking annoyed. Mike and I are both 32 years old. To men our age, teenage idol groups seem like nothing more than a high school play extension. I agreed with him, saying, "Yeah, really," and turned my attention to the menu on the wall. Though I hadn't told anyone, I was once part of a pop group in my teens. Ignoring the chattering women, I glanced at the menu, reminiscing about those days. While attending high school, I was part of a talent agency and performed as a pop artist. It was the era when groups like Silver Beat and Starfire were at the peak of their popularity. Our group was still small and not very well known, but we had released CDs and had some dedicated fans, mainly performing at live houses. We were determined to become as big as Silver Beat one day. With that goal, we worked hard in weekly lessons as a team. However, I wasn't particularly handsome, just average looking. Instead, I focused on honing my dancing skills, hoping to stand out in that area. I continued performing in the music industry for a year after graduating high school, but due to differences in direction among the members, our band disbanded. We all went our separate ways. Since I wasn't very popular, I tried pursuing a solo career but didn't gain much traction. Eventually, I ended up as a backup dancer for other artists, and as more and more young performers debuted, I began to question if I should continue in this field. By my late 20s, I retired from the entertainment industry. I then enrolled in a technical school for IT, aiming for a job. After registering with a temp agency, I worked at various IT companies. The company I was temping for now is an app development firm. They were known to offer permanent positions to temps. Motivated by this, I worked hard to secure a permanent position. However, 3 months after I started, John Smith, the president's son, joined the company as an experienced hire. Since then, the atmosphere in the department turned sour. John, leveraging his position as the president's son, did whatever he pleased. He was domineering with male employees and openly lecherous with female employees. He was particularly harsh on temps like me, often calling us for trivial tasks without any real need. Even when I had a pressing task due by noon, he'd interrupt with his errands, causing real trouble. Just the other day, he took over a young female employee's task and dumped it on me, saying, "That's a lot of data, must be tough. It'll take you half a day. I'll do it for you." Hey! David, you handle this data. As a temp, it's your job to support us full-timers. When a full-timer says that, temps have no choice but to comply. I had to stop my current work and start on the data as John ordered, finishing it by noon. Then, I hurriedly resumed my interrupted task and managed to complete it by the morning deadline. This kind of treatment is commonplace in this office. It's somewhat understandable for temps to receive one-sided orders. But his selfish behavior towards other employees gradually made him an outcast in the office. Despite this, Emily, a new female employee, became his favorite target. He persistently hit on her every day. At 22, she was the youngest and prettiest woman in the office. Because of this, he kept finding excuses to involve her in his work. However, Emily seemed to have a quiet personality. She couldn't refuse his daily advances and ended up working with him as he dictated. Feeling sorry for her, there was nothing I, as a temp, could do. I just pretended not to see, and each day passed by without me being able to help. On the first workday after the new year. After finishing the New Year's greetings and returning to my department, John was excitedly planning a New Year's party for the following week. However, none of my colleagues seemed enthusiastic about it. No one joined in on his excitement. I returned to my desk and began organizing my documents when John called out to me from behind. "David, we're having a New Year's party next week. You better come." It was supposed to be for full-time employees only. But Jake insisted on letting the temps join, so you're in. I didn't want to attend such a party, but it would be foolish to refuse and jeopardize my chances of becoming a full-time employee. I decided to quietly drink and told him I would attend. It seemed other temps couldn't refuse either and resigned themselves to participate. The party was held at a pub the following weekend. I wanted to sit at the edge of the table, but the manager, Jake, told me to mingle with the full-time employees. So I ended up sitting across from John, much to my dismay. Of all places, right in front of John, worst luck. Feeling disappointed, I saw him calling Emily over and telling her to sit next to him. She reluctantly moved from her chatty group of female employees to sit beside him. When she sat next to him, John happily started bragging. He went on about the car he drove, the brand of his suit, and how much his watch cost, talking only about himself. Emily nodded along, but it was obvious from her expression that she was just being polite. However, he didn't seem to notice this. Misinterpreting her politeness as interest, he began hitting on her. Initially, she managed to deflect his advances, but his behavior escalated to the point of touching her. Clearly uncomfortable, she glanced at me, silently asking for help. Honestly, I didn't want to talk to John. But I couldn't ignore her distressed look, so I kept talking to him, trying to divert his attention from Emily. As a result, John, unable to talk to her, grew increasingly irritated and finally decided to get rid of me. Not much going on here. David, you, dance over there. Just in your underwear. This is the kind of thing temps should do to liven things up. He suddenly shouted, and with everyone already tipsy, they enthusiastically supported his idea. Other drunk employees started chanting for me to dance, making it impossible to refuse. Reluctantly, I took off my shirt and pants, leaving me in just my underwear, and started to dance. To everyone's delight. I decided to go all out with a silly dance. The employees clapped and commented, surprisingly, he's a good dancer, while happily recording videos with their phones. As I danced amid the lively atmosphere, I saw an unbelievable sight. John was clinging to Emily, trying to kiss her in the middle of the party. Furious from being made to dance in such a humiliating manner, I impulsively danced over to them. I intentionally stepped between them, grabbed a beer bottle from the table, and poured it over John's head while still dancing. As I playfully doused him with beer, he flew into a rage and lunged at me. I continued to mock him with a smile, which only made him angrier. He turned red and swung at me. Other employees tried to intervene, but he couldn't be calmed and kept raging. The noise of our commotion seemed to echo throughout the place. The restaurant staff rushed over, asking us to keep it down. Although they managed to pacify John, the party atmosphere was ruined, and the New Year's party ended there. Even after we left the bar, his anger hadn't subsided, and he kept trying to come at me. Other employees held him back and urged me to leave first. So I did. On my way home, as the alcohol wore off, many thoughts ran through my head. I knew my chance at getting a full-time position at this company was over. Feeling dejected, I opened the door and went home. The next day, the atmosphere in the office was terrible. Jake called me into a separate room and asked me about the incident where I poured beer on John. Not wanting to involve Emily, I took the blame, saying it was a personal grudge. He calmly informed me that he would report the incident to the temp agency. However, knowing about John's problematic behavior towards temps, he said he wouldn't make a big deal out of it. Thanks to this, I only received a warning from the temp agency and avoided any severe consequences. John must have gotten a scolding from Jake. After that, he stopped persistently hitting on Emily. Instead, he began glaring at me whenever we crossed paths, but I ignored his looks and focused on my work. However, a few days after the New Year's party, I was suddenly informed by the temp agency that my contract was being terminated. When I asked why, they said it was because of sexual harassment complaints. Since I had no recollection of such behavior, I went to the company to find out what happened and was shown a video of me dancing in my underwear at the party. The complaint stated that I had danced provocatively despite the discomfort of the female employees. Furthermore, Jake said that while he didn't want to make a big issue out of the New Year's party, he couldn't overlook such behavior. And the company decided to end my contract. Despite repeatedly explaining that I was forced into the dance by the employees, the temp agency wouldn't listen. They told me I had to make my final farewells at the company the next day and leave. I've worked so hard aiming to become a full-time employee, but now it's really over. Feeling like an empty shell, I said okay and left the temp agency. The next day, I went to the company to make my final goodbyes. After saying goodbye to everyone, I stood in front of John. I didn't want to talk to him, but I felt I needed to give a proper farewell. "Thank you for everything," I said. He smirked and replied, "It's good to get rid of someone who'd strip in front of women." I wanted to end things peacefully, but I couldn't help glaring at him and retorting, "You were the one who told me to strip and dance." I couldn't hold back and yelled at him. Jake and the other employees watched from a distance. "Even if I told you, you could have refused. If you didn't, it's your fault for the harassment. There's no way I could refuse." I muttered a small protest, but Jake intervened, saying, "That's enough." He then urged the employees to get back to work. Having no choice, I quietly left the office. As I waited for the elevator, Emily came running after me. "David, I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble." She bowed deeply in front of the elevator. "Emily, don't worry about it. This company and I weren't meant to be. I'll find something else, so don't worry." As I spoke, she seemed to want to say more but hesitated. When the elevator arrived and I stepped in, she handed me a note. "This company is hiring. Maybe you could apply." Just as she finished speaking, the elevator doors closed. I opened the note, and I saw it was for a well-known rival company. There's no way I could get into such a big company, I thought as I left the building. When I went to the temp agency to find my next placement, the sexual harassment allegations seemed to have followed me. They told me they couldn't find a new assignment for me. I realized I'd probably never work for that agency again. So, I terminated my contract with the temp agency and began looking for another job. The next day, I registered with another temp agency, but I couldn't find a placement as quickly as I had hoped. Nevertheless, I had to make a living. I scraped by with short-term part-time jobs while continuing my search. A few months later, I noticed a job listing for the company Emily had mentioned before, and I decided to apply, even though my hopes weren't high. This company was an app development firm founded by a young woman while she was still a student. It had grown rapidly to become a leading company in the industry. I applied through their mobile site and received an email with an interview schedule. I was surprised to even get an interview, but I figured I'd be rejected quickly. With this negative mindset, I headed to the interview. When I arrived at the company's headquarters, I was stunned by the size of the building. It was much larger than the building of my previous workplace. I found out the company was on the 14th floor. Up that high, huh? I pressed the button, and one of the 6 elevators immediately stopped. I nervously stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the 14th floor. The high-speed elevator quickly arrived at the 14th floor. I entered the office and headed to the room prepared for the interview, where President Anderson was already seated. I straightened my posture out of nervousness. I had seen her photo on the company's website and thought she was quite beautiful and impressive for her age, but in person, she was even more stunning. She was the only one in the room, indicating she would be conducting the interview herself. I greeted her nervously. Suddenly, she looked intently at my face and then came closer, grasping my hand. "Finally, you're here. I've been looking for you." She looked up at me with a hopeful gaze, making me even more nervous in a different way. As I stood there, stunned, she released my hand and began speaking with a gentle smile. "I've heard about you from people at your previous company. They said you're very capable, David. Did you hear that from Emily?" I asked. She gave a vague response. It made me think Emily had recommended me. I silently thanked her. The interview proceeded smoothly, and I was officially hired as a full-time employee. I was so happy that I bought a can of beer to celebrate at home, even though I usually didn't drink. From the next day, I threw myself into my new job with enthusiasm. The company had a supportive environment, and all the employees were great to work with. I felt a strong responsibility to meet the expectations of Emily, who recommended me, and President Anderson, who hired me. I worked hard every day with that motivation. As a result, I gained recognition from my colleagues and gradually earned their trust. President Anderson was very friendly, often casually chatting with me in the office. I was so happy with my new job that I got a bit carried away. One day, I was in the break area and, without realizing President Anderson was nearby, started humming one of my old songs. From behind a pillar, she peeked out and said, "You seem to be having fun." Flustered, I apologized, "I'm sorry," but she just smiled warmly at me. "I like your singing, David." Feeling embarrassed, I scratched my head, blushing. About 2 months after I started at the new company, I got used to the job and became comfortable talking with my colleagues. I felt truly happy. I had never enjoyed work this much at any of my previous temp assignments. With meaningful work, friendly staff, and a wonderful boss, I was genuinely glad I had made the move. See you tomorrow. Take care. Today was fulfilling. Feeling satisfied as I headed home, I casually checked my social media and saw something trending that caught my eye. Idiot employee dancing naked. I tapped on the video with my thumb, and there I was, dancing in my underwear. It was the scene from the New Year's party at my old company. Why is that video? The description read, "Got rid of a vulgar employee." Those words were written in the description. And the account name on that video was familiar. Of course, it was John. I had seen this account when he showed me a video of his luxury car. The video was posted 2 months ago and had already garnered many comments. How could anyone strip in front of women? Is this the 80s? Only a creep would do this. This would definitely be unacceptable nowadays. Among the many comments criticizing me, some were trying to identify me. Isn't this the former pop artist, Alex? Yeah, it's Alex. How far he's fallen. Gross. He looks fat, doesn't he? The video had over 20,000 likes. Checking other social media platforms, I saw that the video had been widely shared. And some even knew where I worked now. Seeing that video made my previously contented mood plummet into despair. I stood there at the traffic light, staring at my phone until someone bumped into me from behind. Thinking back to my days on stage, basking in the adoration of fans. I never imagined I'd end up as a mere office worker. Reflecting on my hopeful teenage years, I felt pathetic. With heavy steps, I returned home and noticed an email in a folder I hadn't checked in a while, related to my old company. It was full of emails from John. "So you were a pop artist? How humiliating to show such a disgraceful scene. This is your punishment for embarrassing me. I'll make sure the world sees how pathetic you've become." So John is the one who spread that video. That night, I couldn't eat dinner or sleep. A few days later, the video started appearing in videos by current events YouTubers, and searching my former stage name, Alex, brought up countless clips. I saw Alex at the station the other day. He must live around there. Let's track him down. Some people were even trying to find out where I lived. There were also phone inquiries to my company. Naturally, this affected how my colleagues viewed me. Am I going to have to leave this company too? By then, I had lost the enthusiasm I once had. In the morning, my alarm went off at the usual time. I tried to get up, but my body felt heavy. I had experienced a lot of gloomy days at my previous company, but I never thought I'd face the same situation again. Now, my past and my disgraceful dance were known to the public. The weight of this burden was far greater than anything I had felt before. Feeling down, I went to work, where the atmosphere seemed cold towards me. Even those who usually chatted with me were distant. The administrative assistant who always greeted me with a smile in the morning avoided eye contact. Despite being treated like a pariah, I still had to do my job. The day that used to fly by now seemed to drag on endlessly. At 3 p.m., with a sigh, I thought, 2 more hours to go. When President Anderson approached me, "David, I have some free time today. How about we go out for a drink?" she said, mimicking the act of drinking with her hand. I honestly wanted to go home right after work. But given that the busy president had taken the time to invite me, and feeling lonely with no one else talking to me, I accepted her invitation. After work, we went to a dining bar near the station. We ordered a Mediterranean course and wine, and after chatting for a while, she brought up the topic of that social media post. So that was why she invited me. Was she going to fire me because the company's name was involved? As I was having these negative thoughts, she unexpectedly started to comfort me. Everyone has pasts they'd rather forget, but the past is the past. The important thing is to keep moving forward, she said gently, her face slightly flushed from the wine. Yeah, it's pretty embarrassing. I'm sorry if this has caused the company any trouble. If you want, I can leave, I said, lowering my gaze. Then she said something astonishing. I'm not thinking of letting you go. Besides, didn't you do that dance to help someone? That girl? Emily, she's actually my sister. I stood there with my mouth half open in shock. She started to tell me about her relationship with her sister. When Emily was in elementary school, their parents divorced. President Anderson, then a high school student, stayed with their father, while Emily left with their mother. Emily had wanted her sister to help support their mother, but she couldn't bear to leave their father alone. This created a rift, and Emily stopped responding to her sister's attempts to contact her. Even after starting her own company, President Anderson found out that Emily had deliberately joined a rival firm, my old company. As she traced the rim of her wine glass with her finger, she spoke with a hint of sadness. Emily was so grateful for your help. But she felt responsible for your resignation and called me out of the blue. And then she mentioned that you might be Alex, the pop artist I used to like. She said that after receiving a call from her sister for the first time in ages, who told her to see for yourself before hanging up. Her old feelings came rushing back. I've been your fan for a long time, she said shyly, her face now a deeper shade of red. Ever since middle school, she had been a fan of mine. She watched my performances whenever she felt down, whether from school troubles, her parents' divorce, or challenges in starting her company. Even after I retired, she continued to find strength in my past videos. When I saw you at the interview, I recognized you immediately. I never expected you were working at the same place as my sister, she said, looking at me with her hands clasped on the table. You've helped me in so many ways, David. First with your singing and dancing, then by helping my sister, and now by working hard for my company. You mean a lot to me, she said, her eyes glistening with tears. I wanted to thank you earlier, but I didn't know how since you kept your past hidden. I was ready to quit, but this unexpected turn left me unsure of what to say. It was only natural to help your sister. She was clearly distressed, I said. With the alcohol giving me courage and knowing my true identity was revealed, I decided to be completely honest. I really appreciate you hiring me as a full-time employee. And knowing you've thought about me for so long. But look at me now. I've gained weight and aged. Seeing me like that must have been disappointing. As I said this, President Anderson, with teary eyes, chuckled and replied, your dance and singing were just like before, and smiled warmly. We locked eyes for a moment before bursting into laughter together. The next day, when I arrived at the office, President Anderson was already there. We exchanged morning greetings with the staff, and our eyes met. We had left the bar around 11 p.m. the night before. Since we were both a bit tipsy, we shared a taxi home. In the taxi, she held my hand and leaned her head on my shoulder. Now, seeing her at the office, I wasn't sure how to view her, whether as a boss or as a woman. Sensing my conflicted feelings, she teased me slightly. David, let's have a great day today, she said. Ah, yes. I'll do my best, I replied hastily. She chuckled softly and walked into the meeting room. I returned to the office and sat at my desk, but my heart was still racing. Could it be, am I falling for her? That day, I threw myself into work, trying to clear my mind, but even after I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about her. In fact, I became even more aware of her. The atmosphere in the office was still tense, with everyone avoiding me, but the way she looked at me was clearly the look of someone in love. Being looked at like that every day made it impossible for me not to notice her, no matter how much I tried to ignore it. I struggled every day to keep my feelings for her hidden. One day, my colleague, Jason, invited me to lunch. In an environment where everyone else was avoiding me, he was the only one who still treated me the same. We ordered our usual set meals at the diner and started eating when he suddenly brought up the video. That video of you is going viral. Everyone in the office seems to know about it. Must be tough. Yeah, there's nothing I can do to stop it, I replied reluctantly. He then mentioned a different video that had been uploaded. My resentment towards John grew as I wondered why he was so determined to ruin me, but Jason insisted I watch the new video. Look. It's not a video criticizing you. Check it out, he urged. I said, it's fine, really, but he insisted I watch it. Reluctantly, I pulled out my phone and checked the social media post he mentioned. The new video showed the scene from the party where John was harassing Emily. It captured him touching her and forcing himself close to her, as well as the conversation where he ordered me to dance naked, and my efforts to protect her. You really stood up for that girl, didn't you? Good job, Jason said, treating me to lunch as a token of appreciation. Within a week, my colleagues started apologizing to me one by one, saying they had misunderstood me. While I was relieved that they now knew the truth, I couldn't help but wonder who had recorded the video. I remembered people filming with their phones, but I didn't think anyone had captured the entire scene. A few days later, President Anderson invited me out for drinks again. Without hesitation, I accepted her invitation, and we went to a nearby buffet. We picked out some appetizers and sat down, chatting about work, when the conversation turned to Emily. Yesterday, I got a call from Emily for the first time in ages. She mentioned the New Year's party video, she said. Apparently, several young employees had been filming the party at John's request. John had edited the footage to only show my embarrassing dance and posted it online. Due to my past as a pop artist, the video went viral. It became a topic of conversation at my old company, and John boasted about getting me fired, flaunting his influence. However, my former colleagues, who had suffered under his arrogance, decided to upload the full video showing the true context. John's social media account, which initially had many likes, was now flooded with criticism, labeling him a harasser. His identity as the president's son was revealed, causing a huge scandal. The company faced backlash from clients, and the president, frustrated by John's poor work attitude and his struggles with client inquiries, became furious. Consequently, John was forcibly dismissed and kicked out of the house. On the other hand, I was praised for protecting a female colleague, even at the cost of humiliating myself. Old videos from my artist days resurfaced, and my name, Alex, gained newfound recognition. Journalists and tabloid reporters swarmed the company, making it impossible to work. And I even received offers from talent agencies to return to showbiz. Though tempted, I ultimately decided to decline. President Anderson, I'm so sorry for all the trouble this has caused. I apologized in her office. She invited me out for drinks again that night. With no reason to refuse, we went to a lounge after work, where Emily was already seated. Long time no see, David, she greeted me. Hi, Emily. It's been a while. As we exchanged greetings, President Anderson spoke up. Please help me convince her to join our company. No matter how much I ask, she won't agree. I didn't say I wouldn't join, but I need to thank David first. Thank you for protecting me, Emily said, giving me a heartfelt thanks. I'm so sorry you were forced out of the company because of me. Please don't apologize. If you hadn't spoken to your sister, I would have been lost. I'm the one who should be thanking you. Thank you, Emily. I nodded my head just like Emily did. She had already left her previous company, and her sister was trying to recruit her. After a pleasant meal together, we exchanged contact information, and I escorted the tipsy President Anderson home. At the station, we parted ways with Emily, and I got into a taxi with her. Seizing the moment, I mustered the courage to hold her hand, feeling emboldened by the alcohol. Anna, I like you, I whispered in her ear. She placed her other hand over mine and replied softly, "I like you too." She leaned her head on my shoulder. And from that night on, we officially started dating. With a new goal and someone I loved, I found myself more motivated than ever at work.